Did you know that children under 10 are in the age group for the highest risk of a dog bite? In this episode of Fresh Bites for the Bitey End of the Dog, I chat with Debby Lucken, who is the founder of Kids Around Dogs. We explore why children are more likely to be bitten, discuss risk assessment in dog-to-child directed aggression cases, and take a deep dive into the many ways we can promote safety and healthy relationships between dogs and children. And if you are interested in hearing more about applicable, tangible, and immediate steps you can use with your own dog or in your cases, I just launched a subscription series called Help for Dogs with Aggression, which is an additional format to this podcast where I'll walk you through a variety of aggression issues and how to solve them. I'll be doing a solo show on this topic of child-directed aggression in this series as well. You'll find a little subscribe button on Apple Podcasts where the Bitey End of the Dog is listed. Your support of the show is very much appreciated. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Bitey End of the Dog. This week we are going to be talking with Debby Lucken about kids and dogs. Debby is a fully qualified dog trainer with the Institute of Modern Dog Trainers and dog behaviorists with the International School of Canine Psychology. She is a member of the Pet Professional Network, ICAN, International Companion Animal Network, the Pet Professional Guild, the International Association of Animal Behavior Consultants, the Dog Training College, and the Dog Welfare Alliance. Debby has over 7 years experience working with dogs, and she specializes in helping families with kids to train and raise their dogs to be great family companions. Some of her clients have also gone and become great therapy dogs in schools and nursing homes. Debby is also the founder of Kids Around Dogs, KAD, which is an association of force-free dog professionals who specialize in helping families with children and dogs to live in harmony together. Moreover, Debby has designed a successful protocol to overcome their fear of dogs in kids, which all of the CAD-approved professionals are qualified to use. Debby is based in Poole, Dorset, with her husband Gary, their daughter Molly, their 2 dogs, Wilco the pug, and Winnie the golden retriever, and Mario the cat. Dorset is where Debby runs her dog training and behavioral sessions under the name of Poco Dogs. However, she delivers lessons and webinars globally. She is also bilingual, speaking English and Italian, which allows her to help more professionals and dog handlers around the world. Welcome, Debby. I'm really excited to have you on.
Oh, thank you so much, Mike. I'm really happy to be here.
So we are going to jump right into this topic of kids and dogs. And since this is an aggression podcast, I think one of the good topics to jump into, or maybe not such a good topic, but certainly a pertinent topic to this, is the ethics and the risk of keeping a dog with a bite history in the home and how to determine those and make those decisions about, is it right to keep this dog or is it safe to do so? And so I'd love to get your thoughts about what kind of dogs or what kind of cases you're seeing in which you'd have to make that call, as well as sort of your insight in what's tolerable, especially in England, in the culture there.
Yeah. So I don't know whether there is a massive difference in this between our countries or other countries as well. Certainly, probably some countries would favor the child over the dogs. In England, we love our dogs, though. We really do. Having said that, I really think that if someone has a dog with bite history, really needs to consider the situation properly. Can they fully handle working with the dogs? Can they really keep the children and dogs separate? Can they truly make sure that they're always supervised and never left unsupervised? Can they also deal with situations like not having play dates because there could be risks of the dog getting overstressed and be triggered by, children running around? It would make the family situation very different. And they need to be honest with themselves and wondering, right, can I really do this? Can I give up on certain normal things? Because otherwise the dog might react to certain situation. So that's what I think. If they can really, sit with them as a family and discuss what they would have to give up on and what they would have to work on, and can they really fully commit to everything, then it's fine. But if not, or even if there is the shadow of a doubt that might not work, they would have to do or take the brave decision, difficult decision for sure, to find a better family for the dog. That's what I think anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. And do you consider any like specific variables in those kind of cases, such as the level of bite, if there is any, or the size of the dog, or the age of the children, all those kind of more micro variables we might consider major, but also in the context of assessing all the components, they kind of are micro variables that add up to the big picture, right? So what are important factors for you in saying, okay, this is a dog I can totally work with, or maybe this is a dog I've got to have a conversation with the parents about? What are some of those aspects for you?
Well, on the bite, it's funny you say that as well, because very often people call me and go, oh, my dog has bitten the child. And then you find out that actually they didn't. There was that playful moment where unfortunately indeed the mouth has touched the skin, but it was different from a bite basically. And so it's more about teaching the dog how to play with different toys and teaching the child, maybe using different toys, maybe not playing with a ball, for example, but it would be best to have a long tug toy. So that way hand and dog, humans and dog can still play together, but at a distance. So yes, I would definitely consider what we're talking about when we're talking about biting. And sometimes as well, you have dogs they might act aggressively, even if there's not been a bite yet, but it might be foreseen as such. And so you need to consider that case as well, the age of the children, the family style as well. What kind of lifestyle do they have? If I may discuss a case, I'm actually working with a lovely family. The kids are, if I'm not mistaken, 11 and 13. So they're not little, but at that age, especially with 11 years old, they have, they still have that play day. They still kids, but they're not kids yet. So it's quite a tricky age, actually, because they're growing up and hormones are all over the place. So it's actually a very difficult phase of life. So they want to have play dates, but at the same time they have activities. And then this particular 11-year-old is into masks. So sometimes she's like wearing weird masks that I still don't get, but hey, it's fine. So I can see the dog being surrounded by those things. And while is now adjust to the children living in the home, is very different when the kids have friends over, or even when the adults have friends over, to be fair. So the family, we had to sit down and talk about how different life was going to be. And they are extremely committed to the dog. So they've changed the structure of the house. It's changed completely. There are stair gates practically everywhere now. They have play dates, unfortunately, are a thing of the past. So the kids go to their friends if they want to have like a sleepover or little parties and stuff. They go to their friend's house. Their friends are not invited to their house because the dog can't take it. And we are working really hard with these dogs, and the family is fully committed to work a lot with her every day. And there is so much attention and protection, if you want, for the children to make sure that nothing happens. But the dog has full capability of biting. So we worked to make sure that nothing would happen and to slowly adjust her to different noises, to different people. But it's taking a very long time, and this family is fully committed to do it. The kids also fully understand. They knew, right, okay, we're never going to have, or for now anyway, we're not going to have a sleepover with our friends here. We need to go somewhere else. And they have accepted that. In fact, they have actually, because they have actually built a lovely shed summer house so that they could go there in the garden. And yeah, the dog is barking a little bit at that, so we're working on it. But at least there is a distance there. The dog cannot do anything to the kids that go there. And again, it's only like one child at a time, and we're working towards it. But the family is like fantastic. I must say, I was impressed on how committed they were to the massive change in lifestyle, home, everything.
It certainly sounds like management is very proportional to the risk tolerance that a family might have, right?
Yeah, indeed.
And you mentioned ages of the children in that case. How much does age factor into your cases? I know we talk about a lot when we're talking about kids and dogs around the different developmental stages. So when the, infants, and then when they start crawling, and when they start toddling around with their little bobbleheads and looking kind of strange to the dogs. How much do you factor that into your overall, again, going back to the risk and the ethics of keeping a dog with a bite history, or one that you're concerned about?
Yeah. So when the child is really small, I definitely worry more as well, because you can't sit them down and explain things to the child as well. So it's mostly left to the parents rather than the kid, especially as they're toddlers. So literally maybe starting to walk. And when that happens, their body is just so busy doing this thing that even though they might start to understand certain things, they just forget about them. They literally, their bodies and brain is so busy growing and learning to walk and learning to start touching things or grasping things. It's just, I'm done with all this. I'm too busy to worry about a dog as well. So there is that factor. And that means that leaves you with basically just the parents or the carers worrying about the interaction there. But at the same time, the parents or the carers might be really tired because they're looking after such a young child all the time. And, nowadays you're still having to work as well, and you have the house to look after. So chances are that those parents are just way too tired to also then worry so much about a dog. So I will keep that into consideration when visiting a family. And I will ask them, how do you manage all this? Can you manage a toddler and the family and maybe work and keep your marriage going and the dog? Can you really do that? And sometimes when they're confronted with reality of everything they're effectively having to deal with already, that's when they go, oh, I didn't think about that. So it's an eye open. Definitely age is a big factor as well.
And it sounds like through your experience, you've developed this empathy for the parents' side of the coin as well, because we sometimes forget just how busy parents can be. And along those lines, what do you think, other than, the parents, maybe their guard gets strapped down because they're so busy or they're tired or their life comes at them. What are some of the most common reasons for children to get in trouble with dogs? And that's a broad question, I know. We might break that down into age groups. But in your experience, in the cases you're working with, you have quite a number of cases you're seeing for this issue. What are some of the most common things parents should look out for, if you had to make a list of that in your mind?
The first thing, I know it sounds so obvious sometimes, but the first thing is that lack of active supervision. By active supervision, I mean the parent or carer being there with the child and dogs when they are in the same room, say, together, but not being on your phone, not watching TV or the next Netflix thing, but actually be present with the child and the dog. So that is the biggest thing for sure. The fact that they think, oh, they'll be all right. And it could just, I'm just going to go on Facebook for a minute, and 6 hours later, they're still on. But it's just, it happens to the best of us. So definitely that is the biggest thing. The distractions of life get in the way of being really present with the dog and the child. The other thing is also being tired. I think maybe I speak for experience, because my daughter Molly was still is. I'm joking, but she was the kind of child that would just cry all the time. So I remember being so tired that I just wasn't even sure what happened. I don't even know what day it was, that kind of things. And I remember also when she was very little having to drive around because she would not fall asleep if not in the car. And thinking about it now, I think, oh my God, I was driving so tired out of my face. And yet somehow I got somewhere and even took her back home. We are obviously both alive. But I did drive being super tired for not sleeping. So in fact, it put us both in danger there. And the same thing would happen with the dog. And you just think, oh, I'm just going to see the back of my eyelids for a minute. just gonna close it for that second. And yet, it does take a second there. When you have then toddlers, what happens is they starting to walk, or they're walking, but they're still a bit wobbly and not quite on their feet properly yet. And they use anything in their grasp to make sure that they can stay upright. They may use the sofa, they may use a chair, they may use the dog. It's very easily done to hold on to that tail, the fur, the ears, to prompt themselves up. And obviously that's could be quite upsetting for the dog. So that's another thing to consider when we're talking about little ones. When instead we're talking about older children, there is a phase in life where children almost become a little bit selfish, right? And they lose their empathy. So they think that what they're feeling is what everyone else is feeling. So if they're happy, everyone else is happy. If they're sad, everyone else should be sad. Say that they're eating some ice cream. So they're happy because they're eating ice cream. And they found the ice cream, the flavor they want. And then their friends going after them and they go, sorry, we ran out of ice cream. Their friend will obviously be upset because, they ran out of ice cream. But there is that phase of life where the child goes, I don't care. I've got ice cream. you, I don't care so much about. So what happens then is that they lose empathy for animals as well. So they could lose empathy for their dogs too. So what we can do in that situation, instead of maybe the child stop caring for the dog or not understanding that the dog needs to go to the toilet, that kind of things, because they've gone to the toilet, so I don't care about you. We can turn that around and make some points for the child to have maybe some kind of chart or a little chore planner, if you like, so that the child is reminded of the needs of the dog. And that can also help towards them building or rebuilding their empathy as well. So it can be very educational for the child to use, if you like, the dog in the situation.
Is there a certain age range for that child you're describing?
Yeah, so roughly it starts from about 7, can be about as young as 7 years old, to well into their teenagehood. So yeah, late teenagers as well.
I was just going to say, I've seen some of that in my 16-year-old, or soon to be 16-year-old sometimes.
Oh my gosh.
No, but he is very empathetic to animals. So one of the aspects that gets kids in trouble, you were just mentioning, and not something we think about, is, this very small toddlers using dogs sort of as a support beam or a ladder to pull up onto, and when they're tripping and falling. And so they do a lot of tripping and falling. I know I've had 2 kids that have gone through that stage. And you mentioned sort of also this lack of empathy that can come at certain ages. How about some other common reasons or contexts, maybe? I think resources are a big one, right? You want to talk maybe more about that?
So yes, for example, when we're talking about children, they have a lot of toys, and that can be an issue, isn't it? I can talk to experience as well as obviously with other clients. But my own daughter had, now a bit less, I must say. She's 10, but now is more about into her technology rather than plushies or things like this. But she used to love, and she still does to a certain degree, plushies and cuddly toys and stuff like that. And the thing is, we have a retriever. So, Winnie loves her plushies and loves everyone else's plushies. And she's a retriever, so she's got to retrieve. So she sees a cuddly toy, it's fair game, isn't it? She goes there, well, it's here, it's got to be mine. And so she will carry around, and if left to her own device, she will destroy a plushie, to be fair. Very easily done. And that can create a bit of a problem between the child and the dog. And what I see very often happening with clients is then the child goes, but that's my toy. So he goes up to the dog and literally tries or takes it away from the dog. And, maybe the first time the dog would go, oh, okay, fine. The second time you might even have a dog that go, oh, okay, yeah, fine, take it. But by the third time, you might have the dog that's worked it out. If the child comes over and tries to take something away, then the child is a thief. So the dog will act in ways that might protect the item he's holding, a plushie, a doll, whatever. And as we know, things like this can turn quite nasty as well. And we don't want that to happen. So it's always, again, my biggest thing is to prevent that from happening, of course, so that we don't have a bite from things that could have been preventable. And so I always insist to my client to pay their dogs for their toys, even if the toy wasn't theirs to begin with. And I always tell my client as well, and the little kids or any age kids, to have a jar of treats, and that's like the coin to pay the dog for their toys. And they're, normally you want to go for the really good stuff, such as like hot dogs and things like this. But a lot of children don't like to touch hot dogs, or don't like to touch cheese or things like that. But dry kibbles are something that children don't seem to mind to touch. So although they're not as good, in my opinion, there you go. So I will ask him to have the little jar, and it's just for the kids. So it could be like in our house, the jar is a Hello Kitty jar because I'm a giant Hello Kitty fan. So, but they could have their own personal jar. And if there are more than one child in the family, I recommend to have their own jar each. So it's a bit more personal as well. And they can go to the jar and get a few treats and pay the dog for that toy. And the other thing is to remind them, try to be more tidy if you possibly can, which is really hard with kids.
Yes.
It's so hard to do. But that is definitely, toys are a massive problem when it comes to resources around dogs.
Yeah, I love that strategy of incorporating something fun for the child to do that makes sort of incentive to do it. And of course, the lower level cases, we'd have to be careful with the more severe cases about, of course, the management and the safety involved. And so a question that I had from one of my students is, what about trainers? So for the trainers listening in, that may not have children themselves, and so might not recognize something like you had just mentioned, something that's insightful as a parent. It's like, maybe they don't want to touch the slimy treats. They want the more like Cheerio style treats or something like that. Little things like that we might not think about unless we've, experienced our kids waking us up at 3 a.m, expressing those feelings that they don't want to hand that slimy food, right? So,
Indeed.
So what are your suggestions there for the trainers to kind of navigate this and learn more?
So this is going to be a little controversial in a way, but I often think that the dogs and kids are not that different from each other. So even to professionals who don't have children, and there's so many out there, and I completely respect that decision, or might also be outside of their own decision anyway. But think of the kids you're working with as dogs. Some dogs will really like the hot dogs, some really like chicken, some really like cheese, some are really happy with kibbles. So they'd be different. So I would say be prepared for anything when you go to your client. Have your pouch with different bags of different rewards and treats, and each bag should have their individual bits of treats. So one little bag would have the chicken, one little bag would have some kibbles, one little bag will have cheese, for example, and keep them separate. That also in case there are allergies as well. That way, when then there is a child, you can just get the bags out and go, which one do you want to use? And then it'd be up to the child. You can even, if the child is happy and old enough to do it. If not, will have to be the parents stepping in, or the parents themselves. They can even do a little game to find out what the dog likes best. And they could have, a little bit of ham in one hand and a bit of kibble in the other hand, and close them to a fist and then present it to the dog and see which one the dog will go for first. That way, they might even get a bit more interested in holding a little bit of ham because their dog prefers it. So they might want to do something that the dog really likes. So that could be also a little alternative. But definitely be prepared for anything, just like you would if there were no children in the house and you just go and see a dog. And it's the first time you see the dog, what food is he going to prefer? So yeah, I normally have literally like a little buffet in my pouch to see, right, what are you going to like then? And I would do that even if there were no kids in the family. I'll just go and see the dogs. The first time I see the dog, what's your favorite thing? And generally I don't know. So I'll shop with everything just in case.
Do you feel like there's some cases where it's kind of almost essential you do have some experience with children, or maybe have worked with children in some other regard? So a case that might come to mind, is a child with a certain disability, and learning more about how to accommodate that particular aspect in the case to make it more successful. Do you recommend maybe bringing in a colleague or somebody else, or even talking to somebody with knowledge about that particular aspect?
Absolutely. If you're going to see a child of a certain age range or certain special need, and you're just either don't have the experience or you're not sure you can handle that situation, I really do hope that a professional will think, actually, I could do some help. So rather than going in alone, they could learn from someone else. So they maybe ask a colleague or someone else that they know have this kind of experience, and maybe ask to shadow them so that they can learn. And if that's not possible, then just recommend them. But definitely, I wouldn't try to just wing it and see what happens, because there is too much at risk. And also, I feel it would come across a bit unprofessional, in my opinion. We don't know everything, and we don't know what we don't know, but we can always learn. So I learned from a bit of experience with having a child, but then when it comes to special need, I work with other professionals. I studied on that. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known either. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and if you think about the flip side of the coin there too, even it's just the picture it creates for the client that they see you seeking out that additional information for their particular case. I think there's a lot of benefit to that, from building trust and rapport with that client as they can see that. I want to shift gears to sort of a heavier topic, and that is a couple different things. But one of the topics I want to start with is kids that are bitten by the family dog, and now they're afraid of the dog. And, I was talking about this on other podcast episodes about the lack of resources for dog bite victims. There really isn't much out there. When somebody's looking for professional help on that particular topic, there's lots of options for therapy and support in that aspect, but not a lot on the specific topic of I've just been bitten or attacked by a dog and now I'm experiencing significant trauma or distress when I see your dog. When it comes to children, especially, we can all, I'm sure, recognize the potential impact later on down the line as they get older and how it affects them into adulthood. If that issue is not addressed, or worse, we continue to try to keep that dog in the home with a child that's afraid, or we're not recognizing that. Or maybe the goal is maybe the child's showing some fear, but everybody's agreeing we could continue to work with that case and in hopes of a successful outcome, keeping the family dog in the home. So what are your thoughts there? Do you have any resources or additional strategies for working with the kids that have been bitten or have experienced some behavior directed at them that they're afraid of?
So I designed a protocol to help children who are scared of dogs to overcome their fear, and is, touch wood, very successful so far. And so what happens in the protocol is that we do cover the therapy side with cognitive behavioral techniques. We have some online sessions, and in those sessions we actually teach children, and those are without a dog present. First, we teach children about dogs. So we use canine body language, we use the knowledge of, what dogs do effectively, why are they here, kind of thing. So that in those sessions, the children are not put in any situation they don't want to be, so that everything is on screen and, there is no direct interaction with the dog straight away. But we're getting the kids to get to know dogs. So it's almost like a rebirth into the dog world. So what they have learned after a bite is that dogs bite. And it's painful when it happens. So they should be scared of them. But what we want to teach them is that there is something else that you don't know about dogs, and we're teaching you that, and we're emphasizing it. And then during the week, during the times the child is not with us in the session, basically, it's up to the parents or the carer to keep up the good work. We give them weekly tasks to do, and we use cognitive behavioral techniques to basically change their mind about dogs. CBT is basically when your brain forms an idea. And what we do, we get the idea out of their brain. We play around with it like a Rubik puzzle. We play around with it. We make it better. We make it positive and happy, and then we chuck it back into the brain, so the child keeps his positive attitude towards dogs instead. So then during the week, that happens with the procedure of the parents. And then after the online lessons, or as we do in them, see how the child is progressing, then we start to introduce a dog. The dogs are assessed as well, so we want to make sure that the dogs are happy to be working with children, because you don't want to push any dog to do what they don't want to do. We chose a location the child knows very, very well. Literally, the first session is in front of their house, that we don't even go anywhere. And we don't push the child into do anything they don't want to do. Do they want to hold the lead with us? Fine. Do you not want to? That's also okay. So we go with the child limits, if you like, never pushing those. And I think he's been so successful because the child never feels like they have to do something they don't want to do. And that's also why I don't agree with parents that should have been a bite that would keep the dog if the child then has become scared. And I don't agree so much with parents who adopt a dog because the child is scared of dogs. So they think, oh, that's it, let's solve it like that. That's not a great solution, because effectively the child then is completely forced to live with the object of their fear in the same house. And I always feel that children should be safe in their home, at least. So I don't really like to see it. And I discourage family. They go, oh, my child is scared of dogs, so I was thinking of getting a dog. What do you think? I would discourage that. And I think that when we give them so much power, we give the children so much power to choose, very often they go, oh, I could choose maybe to help you walk the dog, with the same lead. I wouldn't just give the lead to the child and go, see you later. We hold it together. Or maybe I can ask the dog, to lie down, and I'll chuck a little bit of food to the dog. Things like this, little way of engaging with the dogs. They might feel that they have more power over their decision, so much so that they decide to do things that they wouldn't have thought of before. And it's lovely to see. It's lovely to see how empowering that is for them.
Yeah, choice and control is something we talk about all the time with dogs, and clearly you are using it with children, which is It's really cool to see,
And that's what I was saying, that very often, it may sound weird, but very often when we work with dogs and children go, oh, you guys are quite similar, actually. So even if you don't have kids, but you work with dogs, you go, I can relate the two. So yeah, it's very similar.
So I'd love to talk a little bit more about some of the more severe cases here. Mm-hmm. So we were talking about, just before we hit that record button, about the child fatalities and what, the differences between different countries. You're in England, I'm in the US, but there's a lot of similarities in what happened. And, the number of fatalities that are happening to certain age groups of children has slightly increased over the last couple of years here in the US. But what are your thoughts there? Are you seeing the same things happen in your area of the world where, you're getting a fatality to a child and you're seeing the same circumstances, the reason? A lot of those are speculation, of course, because we're going on media reports. But as a trained professional, you can kind of sometimes profile a case or make some assumptions about it based on your expertise. So what are you seeing there on your side of things?
So just like you, I agree that, you can see there is an increase on dog bite and fatality as well, unfortunately. And again, on little kids, a toddler age seems to be bigger, although there is also been a very young baby not long ago in Wales. And although, as you say, a lot of it has to be speculation because the media talks about that case for that one day and it leaves you with, oh, the police is investigating, and then you never hear about it again, as if it never happened, which is actually quite disappointing because if you talk about it, then people will be more aware and perhaps they will question having a dog in the first place before anything happens. The thing I've seen happening more and more is that adopting a dog or getting a dog is almost as easy as getting yourself a new pair of shoes. And I don't think it should be that easy, you see. So that's something I've noticed. And then, I don't know, a week or two later, something happens and you go, oh my gosh, a week, the dog doesn't even know, where it is in a week. And yet the family might, again, it's speculation, but might assume that the dog has become familiar with the location, with the house, with the family. And so they may take more liberty around the dog. But effectively, it's perhaps a lack of research before adopting a dog and too much trust in the animal and not having given that animal enough time to effectively get to know the place and to even reveal his real personality in a way. There isn't just not enough time. So it is a series of events that you see coming together too often. And it could have been due to the pandemic and how I think we all seen during the pandemic a massive increase of adoption of dogs. And even though the prices, I think in America was the same, prices for dogs went up in an incredible amount of money, and yet people were paying them because it was finally time to be home and we can finally have the dog that we always wanted, or we need that companion, so let's spend that money. And that has obviously increased in number of breeding of dogs because people could see money in that. It's a chain of events. It is not a pretty one. And now I think that now that life is back to normal, we see still a lot of people breeding dogs, but they've realized that the prices need to go down because people are not buying them like before anymore. And you get, like I said, a dog like a pair of shoes. Bit cheaper. Oh God, I'll give you a discount because you don't know, because the sky is blue today. You get a discount on a dog, like you get a discount on a new top. It's just, it's so much wrong with it, isn't it? And again, people might just get a dog on a whim because they go, oh look, it's cheaper today. I'll get a dog.
Yeah.
And there isn't enough thought of research behind, I think.
Yeah, I think it's a supply. It was definitely a supply issue, supply and demand, as many other things that we experienced during the pandemic. And just to back up to your point too about, not giving enough time to the dog. So they go out and get a dog, and then you hear about these really tragic cases where a week later, or even the same day that they bring the dog home, that the infant, and this is usually in the cases of infants or newborns in which something horrific happens, and it's usually in that shorter time frame. And my suspicion again is there's no definitive research on this because unfortunately a lot of those cases nobody can go and investigate after because the evidence is destroyed, meaning the dog. And it's a tragic outcome, of course, for all involved. But I suspect that if we took more time just to build that relationship, the relationship aspect of the dog learning, who's part of the family and the dog learning to be part of that family, it's similar, I'm not certainly equating humans to other species, but if you look at it in similar aspects of a dog that has a history of maybe killing or chasing and hunting down small critters, cats or squirrels, and then that same dog goes home to a place with a cat, there's a high risk of injury to that cat until the dog has learned that cat is part of the family based on the interactions and observing how the rest of the family interacts with that animal, or maybe another animal of a small species, a ferret or some other furry critter. And at first you're often as a professional going like, oh my gosh, how did this ever get successful? Or isn't there a severe risk of death or injury to this animal? But after some time, it completely changes. The dog gets along marvelously with that other animal in the home, whether it's a ferret or a cat or a human. And I think a lot has to do with that. It's just establishing that relationship so the dog knows who's part of the family, because the dogs aren't being adopted because of their aggression towards every human. They're perfectly fine with the parents when they bring the dog home and they go and meet the dog. And then that tragedy happens when the dog meets the infant that it is not sure maybe that's even part of the family. So
Well, and there must be, if a dog has, for instance, never seen a child or a baby before.
Right.
Must be really weird.
Yes.
And they make those super cute but strange noises, and they move funny. Some don't even walk yet. So when they walk, like I said, they're not stable and they wobble a little bit. So it must be super strange for a dog to see these small creatures,
We might argue, that instinctive drift is happening there, where that particular stimulus is eliciting that, so sort of overt response, uncharacteristic of the dog, but it can happen, unfortunately.
Yeah, indeed,
so I certainly don't want to end the episode on that note. So if you had a kind of a takeaway from all the work you're doing, if you had one piece of advice for all parents out there to ensure a successful outcome, whether it's a dog they just adopted or a dog they've had for years and maybe showing some issues, what would that be?
I love to involve children in anything to do with the dog, from training to feeding to changing the water, picking up the poo if they want to, although often that novelty wears off real quick.
Good luck with that.
Exactly. But if you can really involve the children in anything, you can do a little game like hiding some treats in the living room and get the kids to hide the treats for the dog and then let the dog find them, play some hide and seek, all that also helps with training. But get the kids involved in activities with the dog so that the dog doesn't only see the child as a toy or something that could be problematic, but they actually see someone that is helping them with fresh water, that is getting the bowl of their breakfast ready, that is inventing new fun games for them to do together. Get the child to read to the dog if they're at the right age, or to just tell funny stories to the dog. They don't have to be able to read. They just come up with fantastic story, little ones. So get them to be creative or do a little portrait of the dog. There are, so many creative activities that they can do around the dog. So I would love to see more of that because I think it's so important and special.
Yeah. So again, back to that theme of relationship and the human-animal bond really is such an important piece of this. So Debby, thank you so much. Where can people find you, and what are you up to these days for projects?
So as you mentioned before, and as you know, because you've been also a guest for Kids Around Dogs, you came to have a great mentor session for us. So thank you very much. So Kids Around Dogs is, as you mentioned before, an association of professionals, and we help children and dogs to live happily and safely together. So that's what I do. We are all over the UK and Canada, US and Ireland, and we welcome professionals from all over the world. So if anyone is interested to join us, they can send an email to kidsarounddogs@gmail.com, or you can go on the website, kidsarounddogs.co.uk, and get the information there.
Excellent. Everybody look for those links in the show notes. I'll be sure to put them there. Debby, thanks again. And I hope to see you again in the future.
Thank you so much. It was great chatting to you. Really lovely. Thank you.
It was a pleasure chatting with Debby and hearing her insights on helping families with children and dogs live in harmony together. I'd also love to hear what you would like for additional topics in future episodes of both the Bitey End of the Dog and the Help for Dogs with Aggression subscription series. You can reach out by emailing podcast@aggressivedog.com. That's podcast@aggressivedog.com. I'd love to hear from you, and I thank you for tuning into the show. Stay well, my friends. Thanks for joining me for the Bitey End of the Dog. If you like the show, please feel free to subscribe, share, and give a rating. And hop on over to aggressivedog.com or the looseleashacademy.com for more information about webinars, courses, and conferences, all dedicated to helping dogs with aggression issues. And don't forget, the Aggression in Dogs Conference will be happening from October 22nd to 24th with 12 amazing speakers, all streaming from a television studio in Chicago. It's going to be a truly unique event in 2021.